is NAB Show Live.
Hello and welcome back. You are watching NAB Show Live, brought to you by Broadcast Beat. I'm Tess Protesto.
And I'm Paul Richards, and today we're hosting a panel on eSports. I cannot wait to talk about Twitch, all the new cloud-based streaming solutions with a panel of expert guests. We have Tim Vandenburg from vMix. I know he just got back from TwitchCon.
Yes, we have Norris Howard of Beasley XP, host and producer.
And Stu Grubbs from GoLightStream. Everyone has their own opinions on this growing esports market. I wanted to ask you guys, let's just start with, what is esports and when did you start becoming involved in it? Maybe we can start with you, Norris.
Esports essentially is professional video gaming. It's a lot more complicated than that, but if we're going to bring it down to the simplest terms, that's what it is. People who are good enough at video games to play them competitively for money. But I realized really 10, 15 years ago that this could be a thing, that it really had energy and groundswell when fighting games, became very organized, Street Fighter, Tekken, and stuff like that, where I saw it and I really said the energy behind this is the same energy that we saw behind boxing, behind MMA, and all that type of stuff. And that, to me, was sort of the beginning of the foundation of modern esports.
Same question.
I think the second part of your definition is really the nail on the head. Professional gaming can be done in the sense of content creation or anything else, but esports itself is defined by the competitive nature of it. And so the tournament play, and that really separates it from what, because I'd also consider broadcasters, professional gaming in a way, right? And so but it's also been a largely like, people say e-gaming all the time. I don't know if you,
we were
people
talking
who are
about
not
that
in
earlier.
the scene, and I so frustrating. I mean, I got started in esports. It was actually my first job in the industry. I've been in gaming for about 15 years. In 2005, we founded and built together something called Gottfred, which was the first publication covering esports when it was like 50 kids fighting in a basement for $1,000. It was back in like early Counter-Strike days and that sort of thing. Actually, Major League Gaming bought us, and I'd go on to work for them. World Series of video games, games media properties, and so I stayed in esports for quite a while. That was 2005, 2007. And like I said, compared to the big events you're seeing now, I mean, we do Newegg LandFest 2K7, and it was like Newegg.com was putting on a tiny tournament in Southern California. And so I think you could see the fervor then. I don't think I expected to see the explosion we're seeing now. There's quite a bit of money being thrown around right now. And I tend to be a little pessimistic on the amount of money that's being thrown around. So I'll be differentiating opinion on that. But
fair enough.
There you go.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, for me, I remember doing LANs and connecting up our Xboxes and just playing local, with our mates and that type of thing. And with the advent of the internet, being able to play people like Australia-wide or across the US, it really honed everybody's skills to get better and better and better. And you're out to beat not just your friend next door, but everybody out there in the world. And then, things grew from different communities and different countries, and they came together to be able to create these huge tournaments. And yeah, I probably agree with the money and everything that's going into it at the moment. But it's insane to be able to see what it's become, and it's really given, people that like playing video games, it's given them a route to actually make money and potentially be like the next NBA star or the next, sporting star as opposed to...
That was a good point. I mean, about the online play, everyone focuses on the ESLs, MLGs, these big, tournaments and events that they throw. But there is a lot of competitive play where you can earn money or at least earn prizes by competing online as well.
Yeah.
And I would say that's almost like the minor leagues of competitive gaming in a way.
I'm really interested. Do you guys think that the access or ability to become professional in esports is on par, maybe easier than other professional sports?
I mean,
That's a good
definitely,
question.
because there's no physical barrier, right? I mean, you could have the greatest jumper in the world. If you're 4'11", you're probably not going to the NBA.
Right.
But if you have a stable internet connection and you're good enough and you dedicate yourself enough, then there's a real avenue there. And, you know, we talk about investment, we talk about a lot of the things that are going into esports right now, and it can't stay grassroots forever. At some point, there has to be an injection of capital from, you know, maybe legacy brands. As with Beasley, they made a very big investment into our brand Beasley XP, and that's a way that we're going to be able to open it up to more people who maybe do have the ability to sort of lay more foundations for people to be able to enjoy esports or think esports is a legitimate career path, whether it be as a professional or whether that be on the back end as well. So I think definitely more so than traditional sports because there's no physical barrier there.
That's a great point.
I'd agree with that. You know, in principle, I think there's also, you know, there's a level of, in some of the games, I want to say intelligence required, but there's a deep knowledge of the game and being able to track all those different assets at the same time. Most of the games involve some sort of economy and multiple economies actually that you're trying to balance on a constant basis while also trying to have fast reaction times. And so there is a physical speed you need, but there is no inherent stature limit, like what you said about basketball, for instance. If you're 4'11", you're not going to play in the NBA. But from the training side, I think the people that are finding success in esports make a tremendous amount of effort to be better at the game. It becomes a full-time job, and they have to take, you know, most actual, you know, professional esports players have a very avid physical regimen that they go through, you know, a healthy mind, healthy body. So most of them are actually fairly physical fit. They're going to the gym, they're eating right, but they're also sitting down at the computer 8 hours a day to study the economy of a game, to understand the movements of, you know, the strategy of the game and where the player movements are. And so I would say from an effort standpoint, I've always been an advocate for esports players. They put in a ton of work to play at that level. And it's something that, you know, even as a casual gamer all my life, you know, meaning non-competitive, but I played all the time. I never got even close.
It's not easy peasy, right?
No, you need to dedicate yourself in a very serious way.
Yeah, that's one of the crazy things about it though is that there's a lot of access to games. Like pretty much anyone that might have a console or a PC or even, you know, mobile can get onto gaming now. And I think, you know, maybe I don't have a golf course nearby, so I'm never going to be a great golfer, but the accessibility to actually getting the games, it's really high. But like you said, actually getting to the point where you can be a professional is absolutely insane. Like the kind of, it's not necessarily athletic, like jumping abilities obviously, but like the hand-eye coordination, certain things, and clicks per minute and movement and that kind of thing, it's really high. But also on the other side of that, in gaming you've got very different games. So you have somebody that might be really interested in something like Dota as opposed to playing Rocket League professionally. You know, like there's a huge gap in what kind of games they're playing and what skills. It's a similar skill set, but not necessarily the same, and probably different times that you'd need to spend actually training for it, potentially.
Often by game.
That's a good point. So there's so much growth in the esports market, and I wanted to ask you guys, you know, what you think has having the most impact. There's the Twitch streamers, there's the tournaments, there's the official teams with the big name brands. What do you think is having the biggest impact right now on the esports industry? Even if you just want to pick a few things that you think, wow, this made a big difference.
Personally, I mean, you know, at GotFrag we started something called GotFrag TV, where we did live streaming back in 2007. Our viewers needed packet shapers to be able to watch the stream. That's how bad all the technology was at the time for trying to spin up a mini. This was back when Twitch was still Justin TV and all the other stuff. Yes. So for me personally, over watching it for the last 15 years, I would say nothing's had a bigger impact on esports growing as much as live streaming. I think the proliferation of content around competitive play when they're not necessarily at a tournament, being able to enjoy a competitor on their personal stream and channels and get to know them a little bit more and get to understand their play style and then see them compete in a tournament. There's like a constant touch point for you as a fan to be continually involved instead of just seeing the tournament every 3 months, which was the old way we used to do it. I mean, Counter-Strike, you kind of keep track of teams in between, but once live streaming came, and there was, I mean, back when we started, there was like this real big goal of like, let's get on TV. Once we get esports on TV, we'll be mainstream and it'll be accepted. And the reality was like over time, it was who cares about TV when everyone in our community is consuming content on, through live streaming. And so I would say that in my opinion, nothing's pushed esports more into where it is today than live content.
Yeah. And I would second that as well, saying Twitch has been absolutely transformative for competitive gaming. As you said, without it, I mean, it was rough to get any type of, real content and really sort of consume it from a realistic standpoint consistently. But I also think with that also comes the infrastructure that's been put into esports, especially within the last 5 years. I think that's been really important to sort of begin to legitimize it in terms of the mainstream, because at the end of the day, everybody wants something that they love to continue to grow and proliferate. Nobody wants everything to be sort of underground forever. And I can't reiterate that enough. And so I think by putting more infrastructure into it, you have something like the Overwatch League, which, I mean, has become such a gold standard for in terms of presentation, infrastructure, and, also sales. I think that's really important for esports, and I think as it moves on, the infrastructure in place for multiple esports is going to be the make or break for so many of them.
I can imagine streaming has opened up a lot of opportunity for gamers that have a lot of talent to get recognized, right?
And
Totally.
It's not necessarily like the actual competitive side of things as well. Like a lot of the Twitch streamers might even be ex-streamers, like ex-professional guys.
Yeah.
So that they're launching their career after esports, because the career isn't that long. Like you kind of lose that ability to be as fast as you were.
Just use a name everyone recognizes.
Yeah.
That's how Tyler Ninja Blevins, he's no longer a competitor, and then he blew up.
What's
Wow.
the age range that is generally the top competitors?
Is there one?
I would,
Typically 18 to 25.
yeah.
Okay.
After 25,
Sometimes
you're not
younger.
seeing much.
But usually the
They're
younger than that,
Yeah.
you don't have the maturity to really play as a team and really understand the strategy of the game. Over 25, you start to lose the mental agility
Yeah.
Wow.
in terms of Twitch.
Yeah.
It's like if you've seen people play at a high level, it is like a fraction of a second they whip their mouse and get a headshot. It is kind
Yeah,
of
that's
insane
right.
to
Yeah.
watch.
So you watch the guys you watch Ninja or Shroud or someone like that playing, and they're ex-professionals, so they've moved on from that. But you watch them, and it's insane to see how good they are. Yet then you go and watch a CS:GO tournament or something, and those guys are even better than that.
Yeah,
It's
because they're doing it
crazy
on
to
stage
see.
in high pressure situations.
yeah.
And all
I
that
mean, to give you an
stuff, too.
idea, so when StarCraft 2 was the big popular game in esports, a lot of Korean players dominated that scene. In fact, just Korea in general dominated StarCraft. They were performing about 200 to 300 actions per minute to be considered a top-ranked player.
Yeah.
Actions being key presses, mouse clicks, or movements.
Crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
While managing 3 economies, also seeing only a glimpse of their opponent's base and understanding what units they needed to build to counter that. I mean, it was that was a fun game to watch if you knew the depth of the game, because it was insane how fast they could play.
Wow.
That's really amazing.
So tell me about TwitchCon. I think that we all kind of talked. Tim, I had followed some of your blogs when you were going to TwitchCon.
Yeah.
Sounds like everyone's been there. They've had it for about 5 years now.
I haven't been.
Oh, you haven't been?
I
Okay, so
wanna
tell me
go
about
bad.
TwitchCon.
Real
I would
bad.
love to know, because Twitch seems to be, if live streaming is the big thing growing esports, Twitch is right in the middle there, right? They bought Justin TV. What was it like to be at TwitchCon? And I understand there were lines around the building going twice or 3 times
Yeah.
around.
Every year, yeah.
What's it like over there?
Yeah, it's crazy. For someone to come in from the outside and look at this and go, you catch an Uber to the convention center, and the guy's like, oh, what are you going to? It's like, oh, I'm going to TwitchCon. It's like, oh, what's that? Is that streaming thing? It's like, that's a small thing, and you're like, no. You try and, whenever you get into a conversation about esports and Twitch, you start talking, and then you just pull back and you go, oh, it's probably not worth, trying to get into it. But it's definitely an experience. Like we're saying, the different areas of streaming, not necessarily just esports, but people doing artwork, people doing music, creating costumes, jewelry, just all sorts of crazy things that people do on Twitch. Plus, you obviously have the esports side of things where they have big Fortnite tournaments and that sort of thing as well. So Twitch is a massive place now. So much stuff happens on there, so it's a very overwhelming sort of experience to see.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, you have parts of the show that cover broadcast, tools and services.
IRL streams.
All kinds of stuff like that. You have vendor booths that are around chairs, hardware, lighting. I mean,
Sports drinks, eSports drinks.
Yeah, energy drinks to keep you up in gaming. Then the games themselves are all set up, trying to get more streamers to. There are games built with streaming in mind from the get-go. How do you engage your audience in the game?
Wow.
First of which is actually another Chicago company like GoLightStream, but Jackbox Games. If you remember, You Don't Know Jack was like a TV game when we were growing up. Now it's a game you can actually play with your audience and they can participate. So it's so TwitchCon, I mean, is a mix of just some really every aspect of the gaming industry. Our product, we started in gaming. We built GoLightStream for game streamers. So we're designed a little differently than like the production that would be used for more professional streaming like this. And so we've been kind of watching the evolving of TwitchCon over the years, and it's massive. I mean, it's just insane. All the different things that are there, all the different ways that people are getting involved with Twitch, and then to see games now being developed with your audience in mind, I think is really interesting.
What excites you most about being a gamer and a streamer? I know you have a podcast about attending such events.
Man, I think just sharing the experiences, especially with folks who may not necessarily have the ability to go to these events, it's still very much so a blessing to be able to do this as a job. Yeah. It is really awesome to share those experiences, but also for us, we were a brand that came out of a podcast community, small communities, and people like seeing their own people win, I guess, in a way. And we really like to take that back to our audience, and we really like to share that. And the concept of hearing esports like on the traditional radio is still sort of a idea that was foreign to most people. And now that, through Beasley XP, we're able to do that. We get feedback from it that's the most amazing. We've gotten reviews that said people are sitting down at a radio and listening to the show with their kids. I'm like, when's the last time people did that? Like War of the Worlds or something like that? Like, nobody did that. And then they find out we have a Twitch show, and then they come and they join and they watch the Twitch show. So the ability to do that and sort of be cross-generational, that value is something that I would have never foreseen for what we were doing.
We've been particularly shocked as of late because we're from Philadelphia, and now we're having a huge esports arena being built in our city.
Fusion
it's
arena.
Mind-blowing. Is this where it's headed? Is it the individual gaming streamer, or is it the tournaments of the teams?
Oh, wow, that's a great question.
Or is it both?
I think it's both. I think there's room enough. I think there's space enough for people who are very skilled, who may not necessarily want to participate in that whole apparatus, but I think it also benefits cities and towns and organizations to be able to build those arenas and bring those big events, because as we see now, the investment is there, the excitement is there, and I feel like if they're not jumping on it now, you run the risk of being left behind. So I think it's totally worth both, without a doubt.
What do you think, Stu?
I'm not sold on arenas yet. I've always liked the idea of them. They worked really well in Korea. They have national stadiums that are packed, and I've seen a few, and I think in some cases they're done really well, and in other cases they don't gather quite the audience they thought they would. Yeah. But overall, I think teams as franchises, because esports is different than traditional sports. You're not going to have the All-American basketball and football, and those sports will be evergreen in a way. But esports will constantly switch what's the hottest game right now, over the years. So Fortnite has it right now, but there's Counter-Strike still maintains its reign of how many years has it been a top
almost
esport?
A couple decades.
Yeah. And so what'll be interesting is to see teams build franchises that are really based on content, and then swapping players in for whatever they're competing in at the time, I think.
Yeah. You look at most teams now, they'll have 10 different games they play.
Yeah.
And each person they're not spreading across different games. They're specific to CSGO, or they're specific to Fortnite or whatever. So they're kind of building it like that. So it's pretty crazy. We went up to the esports arena at the Luxor and checked that out, and it's
a cool space.
It really is, yeah. It's really, I think it's good for big events and that sort of thing. I don't know how they go on the day-to-day, running that and having that in such a huge space all the time with bars and restaurants and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see how it goes. It's adding more legitimacy, and that's kind of what people want. But has it gone too big, too quick? But yeah, it's a really interesting time to see what's going to happen.
MLG built an arena in Columbus, Ohio, and they've largely used it as a production facility for anything that MLG needed to do, that they sometimes open to the public for an MLG event inside. Now, it doesn't have, real MLG events were like these multi-stage, massive events that they used to throw in 5 different major cities. This was built in Columbus more as a production studio where they do have some small, one-off tournaments that they'll bring people in, maybe can fit, 50 to 100 people max. I think that is, very, very useful. I think probably what they're building in Philadelphia will become like a production studio first and foremost, with the occasional big event happening, which is a great use of a space like that. And I think it's what, esports will need. I think Hector, my buddy Hector, who started Optic Gaming, did that kind of content game first really well, where he built a franchise of exactly what you're talking about, multiple games, but really strong content around live streaming, YouTube, gaming content, just constantly building up his players' portfolio or brand as individuals, all under the Optic umbrella. And they were doing this before, and now a lot of people are doing this really well, and so I'm not saying anybody else isn't, but at the time, he was pretty much ahead of the game with that.
So we just have a few minutes left. I think we've done a really amazing job of giving people an idea of what esports is. I want to give you guys a chance to geek out. All right, what's something that you've seen? I know Twitch has extensions, there's bits, there's monetization going on. I would love you guys to each get a chance to just something geeky that only esports people would understand, or some techie, geeky thing that is interesting, because I think it does drive some of the fun things that the younger generation finds interesting. Is there something that you could share, maybe each of you? We have just 3 or 4 minutes left.
Some old friends from way back in the esports days that I didn't know were working on something new are building a game that's built around, it's like an old high-speed shooter like Quake used to be. And so they're bringing back kind of that shootout back when Fatality was competing. So they're building a game specifically designed that has no frills. There's not a bunch of animations that are hard to watch. Overwatch can be overwhelming, I think, sometimes, and some other games are like that. So they built like a no frills, just shootout type game. It'll be like high stakes, 1v1. But they built in tools in the game that actually you or I, if we were to start playing, it would give us the data we need to understand whether or not we're actually moving well in the game. And so it actually is spitting out like instructions of, hey, you're not strafing enough. Hey, you're firing too rapidly. And so it's a game also that'll teach you to play it better, which I think is also really interesting because it could raise a lot of competitors up and out. Whereas, it's typically relegated for somebody who already has like fast twitch. So I'm excited for games that teach you actually to be a better competitor. And you're seeing that appear now in a lot of game studios, which is pretty cool.
I think for me, as somebody who's a huge fan of Overwatch, in the new season, they've introduced sort of a package that allows you to follow any player that you want to at any time during any match. So as soon as you drop down and the match starts, you're able to, click on, I want to follow, say, Effect on this one team. And you can follow his point of view, or you could pull back and see the entire tactical map, cool. Or you could go, into sort of like the produced package that Overwatch does for you. Okay. And you can do that on the fly at any time. You got multiple windows up and do it at the same time. So it's quite a strain on your bandwidth, but that's something to me that I completely geeked out about, and I love watching the Overwatch League even more now because of it.
I haven't seen that. That does sound cool.
Yeah.
I think giving like the viewer control, like Twitch plays Pokemon or anything, like these new games and stuff that are coming out, they're building in like Twitch control of the games and that type of thing, or like you can actually tell the person that's streaming like what to do and do maneuvers and stuff within the game itself. So I think that's breaking like the fourth wall on how to, like actually putting input into somebody that's streaming a game that you're not playing, but being able to control elements of it. I had somebody, I haven't played it yet, but someone on TwitchCon was talking about the game that has that element built in, like the control from the user, which is pretty crazy. But as more and more people get onto esports and gaming and Twitch, the more interaction and the more engagement you can have, the longer their audiences are going to be there, the more subs they'll get and that type of thing. So yeah, that's something that I think is going to be pretty cool.
It's like you could play with your favorite gamer.
Play with your favorite gamer. I think Amazon's doing a great job with monetizing it with bits. So the more engaging they are, the more likely that their audience can actually contribute to their channel and their career and make it a real, money-making business almost. It's absolutely incredible. We live stream on Twitch every once in a while. We just got a check for $150 and we're not even like trying. So I couldn't imagine if I was a professional esports.
Awesome.
How much are these like really big esports guys making? Millions and millions for playing video games?
The streamers are making, you know,
They're making the most, right?
If you're on the top end, but I mean, now with esports and, you know, more infrastructure, guaranteed contracts and stuff like that, I mean, it's becoming a much more lucrative option for a lot of these players that are highly skilled that may not necessarily be getting sort of, you know, the huge numbers on Twitch. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, guys. It's so incredible to have you guys here. You guys are really the experts, and so for everyone watching on the NABshow.com, I think we gave you guys a really great look at what it's like to be in the esports industry, but also what it's like just high level, where it's going, and what you guys really find interesting about it. That was great.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been eSports at NAB Show Live, brought to you by Broadcast Beat.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned, because there's so much more coming from NAB Show.
You guys rocked it.
Thank you.